1929 when I was born. It was just when the Depression started. And we lived through, and I experienced what poverty is about. But as little kids, we were very innovative, and we made our toys, and naturally we had baseball equipment and football equipment and basketball. And so we enjoyed different kind of playthings other than, in our days, telephone and radio was high tech. We did not have television, so we were always outdoors. And as you know, in Hawaii, we were always barefooted. I went through part of the 6th grade elementary school in Hawaii, and in those days our parents wanted us to keep up with our Japanese language because they didn't understand too much of English, and so we had to go to a after school language school, which is a Japanese language school for 1 hour every day. But it was a long time ago, and I can't tell you exactly what you want to know, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. But I had a very good, enjoyable childhood, even though we did not have much to live with.
How old were you when the bomb hit?
When the bomb hit, I was 16 years old, and just a little bit older than you were.
What happened to you and your family and friends?
Say that again.
What happened to your family and friends?
Okay, as I explained to you, 17 of my classmates died instantly, and some of them were in the area of the atomic bomb destruction zone, but they were not affected to a point where it was vital at that time. But some of them got sick, but they recovered. And the class grade, just like you people are, that class had 250 students, and I explained to you that we were on a student mobilization program. All the students were. And at 8th grade, helping to destruct some of the homes and bury the debris into a deep hole. And there were 215 of them working on the surface that died instantly. But the people that were in the deep hole somehow survived. I don't know if they passed away later on, but they survived that instant moment. And 10 of that class were sick at home, which one of my very close friends was. And the 10 survived without any injury.
Did others in your family survive?
Fortunately, none of my family got injured. My sisters were sick at home that day, and so they weren't in school. And one of my cousins died, and she was commuting to school, and my auntie, her mother, and the sisters went to trace back to her commuting route to find her living.
Did you experience racism here in the United States after the war? Did you experience racism here in the United States after the war?
I can understand.
Did you experience racism here in the United States after the war?
Oh, racism. In Hawaii, they call it a melting pot, although there were discrimination because there were Caucasians came to develop the sugarcane and pineapple industry. And that's when my uncle and aunties and parents came over to Hawaii. That was about, give or take, 1900. And when you say discrimination, they were treated as a laborer, I would say, better than slaves. They were getting paid 50 cents a day and lining up on a soup line and so forth. But when you're talking about discrimination after I came back from Japan to Hawaii, I heard about the Japanese people at the camp. And I heard some of the discrimination that they went through. But when I was in the service, I was a commissioned officer for 2 years, and in the reserve for 6 years. My basic training as an officer was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. In those days, when I arrived at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, the restrooms were all whites only and colored only. And the thing that I've experienced was that one of my fellow officers next to my quarters, and on the other side was Lieutenant Richards, who was from Carolina, and he was a white. And we were taking a shower, and I asked Lieutenant Williams, who was a black, let's go to a movie tonight. And he said, okay. And I went to the dining room to have my dinner, and I was sitting with Lieutenant Richards. And he was a white lieutenant. And I asked him, hey, Williams and I are going to a movie tonight. Are you want to join us? And he says, yeah. And later on, Williams came to me and he said that something came up, I can't go tonight. And Lieutenant Richards said, do you know why he declined? I said, no. And he said that he can't sit with us. In those days, in the theater, the black or colored had to sit in the last 2 rows in the theater. And the rest were whites. Now, I don't know whether I was considered white or but I guess I was okay. And just to let you know that even a lieutenant, commissioned officer in the U.S. Army cannot go into theaters and sit with the Caucasian or with us. And so when you say discrimination, today's discrimination and the days that this was in 1950s I'm talking about is completely different. And it has improved, but there's still some people that have some mind of discrimination. And I want to let you know, all these things came back because of the question and answer period. It keeps on coming back to me. Is that when I was in the actual active duty, I had a platoon, and I was a minority officer, and the other 2 platoon leaders were whites from Oklahoma and Massachusetts. And my platoon sergeant, who was a master sergeant from Puerto Rico, he was a 22-year-old veteran. And one day he came up to me and he said, you know, Lieutenant, you notice the composition of our platoon? And I said, what is it? And he said, our platoon is more than 50% blacks. And the others, about 20%, the other platoon is in the reverse ratio. And this was in the 1950s. And I didn't think about it until he mentioned it to me. But my platoon performed very well in the regiment. And we always took top awards in the combat ready competitions. And so from the standpoint of morale, it didn't matter. And one more story is, we had a buck private, Duckworth. He was a black buck private. He hates to be told and ordered what to do. And he didn't take a shower. And he smelled like rotten vinegar. I don't know if you know what it smells like, rotten vinegar. And the platoon fellow soldiers were complaining to the sergeant. And we had two black non-commissioned officers, which is sergeants and corporals. One was Sergeant McCall, who was about 6'4", 240 pounds. And the other was a Corporal Williams, who was a basketball player for the regiment, and McDowell was a football player for the regiment. They heard this complaint about the Duckworth not taking a shower and smell awful, and nobody wants to sleep next to him in the quarters. And so the two black sergeant and corporal grabbed Duckworth and took him into the shower and scrubbed him down with hot soap and water. 2 or 3 days in a row. If you don't take a shower by yourself, we're going to do this to you every day. And since then, Duckworth started to learn how to take a shower himself. And he became a fine soldier after that. And just to let you know what the Army can do for a person that's renegade in the private life, join the Army and become a good soldier. And later on, McDowell and Corporal Williams came to me and said, "You know why we're doing this, Lieutenant?" I said, "Why?" He said, "We black soldiers have pride in ourselves, and we want to make sure that all of the black soldiers uphold their standard of being a soldier in the U.S. Army." And so you can see that even though there were discriminations in the Army, everybody was proud to be a soldier in the U.S. Army, and they wanted to bring themselves and their fellow soldiers up to a standard of being a good human being. So, although there were discrimination, there were some good points in improving yourself in the Army. That's my explanation of discrimination.
After all these years, what single thing stands out about the experience? After all these years, what single thing stands out about the experience? Okay. After all these years, what single thing stands out about the experience?
Well, as I told you, I was born in Hawaii, and I went to Japan and experienced a terrible World War II and atomic bomb, and came back to Hawaii and to Oregon. And we've lived here 48 years now in Oregon, and I consider this my second paradise. And so I describe my life as from paradise from Hawaii to paradise in Oregon, and the life in between. And I'm very fortunate to survive that atomic bomb. In fact, you say that I have a nice family, and all the experience I went through, ups and downs in my life, I'm sure all of you have when you're aged at 86 years old. that I hope you all have a happy life like I did, even though there's some struggle.
So we have time for one more question before the break. So maybe you could have one at the bottom to the top.
Do you think the U.S. made the right decision in dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Do I think it was the right thing? It was the wrong thing, but it was the right thing at that moment. I explained to you why. The Japanese, I have to tell you that there's 99.999% of the people want peace, freedom, and liberty. But there's 0.00001% of the people that's have ego, greed, and all of the corruption and everything. And they use ideology to their own agenda to propagandize and brainwash everybody else. And they were the one that started, like Hitler did, start the World War II, and Tojo in Japan, and Mussolini in Italy. I'm sure all the 99.999% of the people wanted peace. You know, what was the... And as I explained to you, in Japan, the military government, the military leaders was the head of the government. And they were the one that was making the decision. Even though there was an emperor, the decision of whatever happens in Japan was not finalized by the emperor, but it was by the military government. And they would continue to fight the war and let the Americans or the Allied forces land on Japan to fight the final war with Japan. And Japan did not have the capacity to fight against all the weaponry and soldiers and modern equipment that they had in the Allied forces to overcome that. And it would have been a disaster. And like the professor at Waseda University said, the war will continue and the people will be forced to fight on the mainland. And knowing that the atomic bomb was the only incident that ended the war. It was an imperfect world, and somebody had to make an imperfect decision. And so President Truman, and so at that time, to end the World War II, the atomic bomb was necessary. And so I'm saying that wrong thing to do, but I guess it was a right decision for furthering the World War II.
That's all for today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so boys and girls, it's time for you to go back to class. You have just enough time to go back to your first period, get your things before you just. All right, very nice job. And then JP, you come back. Do lunch and break, or we do the lunch before.
I took my three sons' family, including my grandchildren, to Japan, and to show them what the area that we live and the type of experience we had through the Peace Memorial Park. And so that's what's about the extent of my traveling back.
When it was happening, how long did it take for you to understand that it was an atomic bomb?
I can't remember whether it was 2 weeks or a couple of months after that atomic bomb was dropped. But at that time, when we learned that it was an atomic bomb, we were told that nothing will grow for 60 years. And nobody knew what atomic bomb was, because that was the first atomic bomb dropped in the populated area. And the people who passed through the contaminated area would have died a couple of weeks later because of the radiation. But it didn't happen in that fashion. The vegetation started to grow the following spring, and the flowers started to bloom. So we were very happy to see that.
As a Japanese American, what were your feelings about the U.S. dropping a nuclear bomb on your grandfather's country?
Well, like I said, it was 70 years ago, and I was just about your age, and it's just a memory right now. So I can't remember how I felt at that time. You know, if you live 86 years old, like I have, when you look back, sometimes you forget what your feeling was at 15, 16 years old. And so I really can't tell that.
What do you think has changed about the world because of this event?
After World War II, there was a moment of peace. And there was, I'm going to repeat what I told some of the previous, but that 99.999% of the people want peace, freedom, and liberty. But there's a 1% of people in the world has ego, corruption, greed, and they create their own ideology and agenda to propagandize what they want. And they brainwash the people. And if you know what's happening now, it's the same thing. I don't think everybody wants war and war and killing. And so there was some peaceful period, some war period, and we have the period now, as you all probably is keeping up with what's going on in the world. And the change of the world, when you ask me, there was many changes while I was living. And probably in your days, there's only one significant thing that's happening now. And you probably see more of these going on, hopefully now. But
How do you deal with being a survivor?
the only thing I can say, it was fate and miracle. Because, like I said, I had a ruptured appendectomy. If the telephone call my father made to the top surgeon's hospital, I would have been right next to the epic center. The dome
have any long-term physical effects from the bomb?
Well, if you live for 86 years, I don't think I had a long-term effect. But I think probably at that moment I may have been affected a little bit with the radiation because I had appendicitis. Appendectomy is a very, very simple surgery right now. You can have just a half-inch or 1-inch incision and have your appendicitis taken out. But I had, in those ruptured appendectomy, I had 2 incisions, and I had to have a tube draining all the pus out of my stomach. And that was before that atomic bomb. And to recover from that, I had a total of 5 surgeries, well, including the first one. It took me about 7 months to recover. And I don't know whether that was because of the atomic bomb radiation or not. But after I recovered from that, I don't think I had any effect from the atomic bomb.
What motivates you to speak publicly about your experience?
I was not motivated. I was just invited to speak initially, and my speech was probably about 5-10 minutes at the most. But as the question and answer period came along, I had to fill in the contents of my speech a little bit more. And it ended up to be like I did, about 35 minutes or 40 minutes. And when I started to develop that, I was invited to several high schools and universities and some community gatherings. And so the message I hope to communicate is probably, hopefully, everyone that I spoke to, including myself, hope for eternal peace. And I have given some grotesque story of the atomic bomb, but with the post-war occupation of America, and it was a good thing for the Japanese people. And so I wanted to communicate that and have people feel both sides have a healing process. And if I can communicate that, then I accomplished my mission.
What is the biggest threat to world peace?
I think I explained to you about the 99.9999% of people want peace, freedom, and liberty. And the only people that creates all the problem is 0.0001% of the people. And they're the ones that try to create an ideology and agenda and propaganda and brainwash the young people. And so what I'm trying to tell you is don't get brainwashed for bad things from bad things. And hopefully all of you will promote peace.
What does peace mean to you?
What does it mean to me? Well, peace means happy life for me. And if you can promote the freedom, peace, and liberty, then that's peace for me.
What everyday things inspire you?
Oh, That's a difficult question. How can I answer that? What inspires me? The only thing that I can do instead of inspiring me, I try to inspire my offspring. Nowadays, I'm not to a point where I can go out to community business meetings and all those things. But my exposure is primarily with my grandchildren. Fortunately, we all live in the Portland area. And off and on, my grandchildren poses me questions, and I have to respond to that. And I try to respond to them best as I can. And I hope there's some inspiration that I'm passing on to them. That's the inspiration.
Do you believe that we could have a conflict-free world?
Can we have a
Do you believe we could have a conflict-free world?
conflict-free world? Not in my lifetime, no.
Do you believe it would be possible in anyone's lifetime?
Beyond that, can somebody answer that? There's a saying that if there's two people on this earth living, there's going to be a fight. And hopefully, in the future, these two people will be able to be inspired to not fight each other. And that's the only way we're going to have peace.
Well, I want to thank you for all the questions we have.
Well, thank you very much for listening.
All right, ladies